are talking Last Radio Call, written and directed by Isaac Rodriguez, who is adapting his own short movie called The Cop Cam. So this is a found footage movie of sorts, and it starts off and you'll be very much reminded of the somewhat kind of classic found footage movie Grave Encounters. Although I would say this movie also has a little bit in common with the most recent Blair Witch movie, which I think is just called Blair Witch, not the original. So the movie starts strong. We have this kind of prologue where we see these two police enter this abandoned hospital, we learn. And there is some spooky shenanigans going on. And it's very tense, I have to say. This scene isn't particularly long. And then we actually cut to, I believe it's like a year later. And we learn that the cop in the footage, his wife, she's distraught because since that night her husband has gone missing, and she's kind of trying to track down what's happened to him. The police have pretty much shut her down, and the bulk of the movie is her trying to investigate what has happened, using this kind of documentary film crew to try and obviously document it. And then inevitably we kind of end up back at this kind of hospital towards the end of the movie. We're obviously learning about the kind of the mythos involving what is going on. So what is going on, you'll have to watch the movie and find out and see for yourself. But let's talk about what I think works in this film. So I've got to say, I think this movie works best when it's trying to emulate other films, if I'm completely honest with you. The beginning prologue, which is about 5 minutes, and maybe the end kind of 15 minutes of the movie, are fairly strong. Maybe not very strong, fairly strong. They are tense. I think you have that palpable sense of kind of dread while you're watching it, because you know that something's kind of amiss. Even the first sort of sequence, the first 5 minutes, even though we have no character interactions, you just know that there's kind of danger lurking around these kind of dark corners. And that, I think, is the kind of the adaptation of the original Cop Cam movie. And then the rest of it, the kind of the bulk of the running time, this middle bit, this kind of investigation, is the kind of the newer stuff which has been added to kind of pad out the story. But let's just talk about these two, the top and tail of this movie. They do remind me a lot of kind of Grave Encounters. In fact, there's a sequence which pretty much mirrors a scene from Grave Encounters, but also the latter kind of the end of this movie. You'll be reminded of the Blair Witch movie as well. But it's done to a good standard, I have to say. There are a little bit of a kind of cheaper effects, but I'm forgiving of that. It is tense, and you do have this kind of this uneasy feeling whilst kind of watching it. So top and tails are good, but we're talking maybe 15% of the movie. That's kind of what that adds up to. What about the other 85%? Okay, so this is kind of like a found footage movie that's investigating a found footage kind of thing, because obviously the wife is investigating the kind of the body cam footage of her husband. You know, and it's kind of like a detective story in a way, because she's going to try and find evidence about what's happening, and that leads her to various kind of people, contacts, evidence that kind of points to what's kind of going on. And what I would say is I do feel this movie does have this kind of this mythos that is kind of built up through the movie about what's actually kind of going on. We talk to various different people, we see various bits of kind of evidence, and some of it is kind of freaky, and some of it is just kind of building that kind of the world building. You know, it's kind of just adding to the legend of this cursed kind of town where this land is essentially, bad. And, all these kind of Native American legend, including this of the Red Sister, who is this undead witch, which apparently is the kind of the root of the problem here. It's a lot of kind of telling, but nonetheless, it's quite of it does build some interesting mythology for the kind of the film there. I have to say, there's scenes where we have the kind of the body cam footage do seem kind of quite well done. They do seem kind of to be a good standard, and you can kind of believe what you're kind of seeing here. And I do have to say, the movie has, it feels like it's made up of lots of smaller segments, this film. And as such, there is a bit of variety in there in regards to kind of what's kind of going on. And the overall kind of mystery is an interesting one. But here's the problem with this film. The bulk of the running time, i.e. which the bits that are not kind of in the walking around the kind of the dark hospital, I feel I have some big problems with it. Number one, the wife is the main character here, but we know nothing about her. She gets absolutely no characterization whatsoever. She's just the wife of the policeman that goes missing, and that is it. So she is not a real character in herself. And I have to say, I don't think the acting was bad, but she isn't really given a lot to do. She just kind of like, all she did, I feel like doing was like the drinking game. If you want to play the drinking game, is where she kind of blankly stares at one of the documentary filmmakers who are kind of behind the camera. She kind of turns around and kind of stares at him for a few seconds. Drinking game, you'll be drunk. But talking of these documentary filmmakers, they are just kind of a floating camera because we really have no interaction with them. Now, if you were a documentary filmmaker, surely you'd be asking questions and things like that. And we get a couple of kind of lines of dialogue over the top, like where, you know, when there be someone behind the camera, but it's so infrequent. They're not characters. It just is a point of reference to get the wife to start sort of saying dialogue. But they needed to be a bit more proactive, I think, in the kind of to develop the you know, ask questions themselves and be a bit more like not just what ultimately ends up just being this kind of floating camera which follows the kind of the wife around and doesn't really ever do anything other than that. It just kind of follows her around and never actually has any type of personality or opinion about anything itself. It just kind of like is just there. And then we have all these kind of little interviews, and some of the stuff is a little bit overbaked. We see this kind of sequence where we have this Native American shaman guy do some type of ritual, and like a tentacle comes out of his mouth. I thought that was a little bit silly at times. It goes just a little bit silly. And you're just wondering why aren't these people getting out of Dodge? You know, there's a point in this movie where something clearly quite dangerous happens, and yet, you know, I get maybe the wife because she's kind of looking for her husband, but after a year, you have to be realistic about the fate of this guy, you know. But they're filmmakers. I just don't believe that they would, you know. They would be kind of like willing to kind of go along with it for still this much longer. And then we have this kind of potential cover-up where everyone seems to kind of know what's going on, and it just isn't explored. So to me, the bulk of the running time here is not really well thought out. There's very little kind of characterizations. It's just kind of going from one place to another, and it feels like it really kind of stop and starts. And you never really feel like you're getting into the groove. When I was watching this movie, I was kind of expecting that type of thing, maybe for the first act, and then we would kind of have the last two acts where, you know, we have our wife and our camera crew go into the kind of the hospital and, you know, adventure ensues. But that doesn't happen until kind of right at the end, in which case I feel like it was a little bit too little too late. And those sequences, although I do think they're effective, they are very derivative of, as I say, Grave Encounters and other kind of found footage. They are well done, I'll give them that. Although, albeit no one tries to turn on any lights, they're just wandering around in the dark and, you know, turn on the lights. So it becomes a little bit of a hodgepodge of a movie, unfortunately. There are some good elements here, and I do think the investigatory side of it, where his wife is trying to find out, could have worked, but we needed to have more interactions with other characters like the car documentary film crew, which should have been more involved. The wife should have a little bit more kind of personality other than just being the wife of this missing policeman. Why doesn't she kind of go to the kind of authorities? We need to see more of that kind of cover up, and what do the authorities know, and why aren't they carrying up, all of that sort of stuff. It's just like a line of dialogue. Oh yeah, everyone kind of knows what's going on, and we'll just kind of leave it at that. So I think the short film, the scary sections are done well, but the kind of everything else is just poorly thought out, unfortunately. I feel that this maybe needed another writer on it, because it just has obviously the guy who's got a good concept for a good scary element, but the supporting material just isn't there. So it's a 4 out of 10 for me. I think it's a little bit of a missed opportunity. If you are a found footage fan, I do think you can still enjoy this movie, and there are sections of this movie that I think will evoke fear and will be enjoyable, but it feels like a missed opportunity, unfortunately, this one. But it's not bad. It's just kind of like wastes its time a little bit, unfortunately. It's a 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.